One ordinary morning, a sudden and unsettling silence swept through Boeing's massive factories. The usual hum of machinery, the clatter of tools, and the voices of thousands of workers all faded away, replaced by an eerie stillness that seemed to echo through the vast, empty spaces. The assembly lines, which were typically alive with energy and purpose, stopped cold in their tracks. Conveyor belts froze, robotic arms hung motionless, and half-built airplanes sat abandoned, as if time itself had paused. This wasn't a holiday or a routine pause for maintenance, it was something far more serious. It was a crisis that no one had seen coming, and its impact was immediate and profound. News broke across the world. Boeing had suspended production of its most popular airplanes, sending shockwaves through the aviation industry and beyond. The cause? It wasn't a technical glitch or a supply chain hiccup, but a powerful move from across the globe that no one at Boeing could control. China, once Boeing's top customer and a crucial partner in its global business, had suddenly imposed new tariffs. These tariffs made American planes far too expensive for Chinese airlines to buy, effectively shutting Boeing out of one of its biggest markets overnight. Orders from China, which had been the lifeblood of Boeing's factories for years, dried up almost instantly. The steady stream of work that kept thousands employed was gone, leaving uncertainty and fear in its place. The company now faced a harsh and painful choice. Should they keep building planes that no one would buy, or halt production and try to cut their losses before things got even worse? The decision to stop production sent shockwaves far beyond the factory walls. Thousands of jobs were suddenly at risk, entire towns that depended on Boeing faced an uncertain future, and countless suppliers found their businesses in jeopardy. The quiet that settled over Boeing's plant was more than just the absence of noise, it was a stark warning. It showed just how fragile our global economies really are and how quickly things can change. Decisions made in distant government offices by people far removed from the factory floor can upend the lives of workers and families half a world away, often with little warning. This is more than just a business story, it's a powerful lesson in how deeply connected and how vulnerable our world has become. In today's global economy, a single decision can ripple across continents, affecting millions in ways we might never expect. For nearly 50 years, Boeing and China were more than just business partners. They were pioneers, shaping the future of global aviation together. In the 1970s, as China began to open its doors to the world, Boeing was there, supplying its first modern jets and helping to connect China to the global community. This groundbreaking partnership fueled China's aviation boom, transforming its airports into bustling hubs and helping Boeing become a true global giant in the process. At its peak, 1 in every 4 Boeing planes was destined for China, supporting hundreds of thousands of American jobs and creating new opportunities on both sides of the Pacific. Boeing didn't just sell planes, it invested in China's future, training generations of pilots, building parts in Chinese factories, and forging deep, lasting ties between the two nations. For decades, this was globalization at its best. Mutual growth, shared success, and a sense that the world was truly coming together. But as China's economy soared to new heights, its ambitions grew even greater, and it set its sights higher than ever before. No longer content to be just a customer, China began building its own aviation industry from the ground up, determined to become a leader in the skies. The relationship, once defined by cooperation and trust, gradually shifted. Competition began to replace collaboration, and the atmosphere grew tense. China's ambitions were clear. It wanted to design, manufacture, and fly its own planes, challenging Boeing's dominance and reshaping the global market. The sunny era of partnership slowly faded away, replaced by a new era of uncertainty, rivalry, and tough decisions for both sides. What was once celebrated as a model of global cooperation now faced its toughest test yet, as headlines warned of growing tension and competition. The seeds of competition had been planted, and both sides were preparing for a long and challenging journey ahead. The world watched closely as these two giants, Boeing and China, prepared for a new kind of contest, one that would shape the future of aviation. The skies they once shared as partners were about to become a battleground, with the outcome uncertain and the stakes higher than ever before. The US-China partnership didn't collapse overnight. It unraveled over years, with each side taking steps that slowly chipped away at decades of cooperation and trust. What began as a mutually beneficial relationship gradually turned into a high-stakes rivalry, marked by suspicion and strategic maneuvering. In 2018, the US raised concerns about unfair trade practices, accusing China of hurting American companies and workers through intellectual property theft, forced technology transfers, and massive state subsidies. These accusations set the stage for a dramatic shift in economic relations. Tariffs flew back and forth, sparking a trade war that escalated tensions and sent shockwaves through global markets. The world watched as two economic giants imposed billions of dollars in tariffs on each other's goods, disrupting supply chains and creating uncertainty for businesses worldwide. Airplanes were spared at first as both sides tried to protect their lucrative aviation industries, but as trust eroded and negotiations repeatedly failed, even this sector became vulnerable to the growing rift. By the early 2020s, the focus of the conflict shifted to high-tech industries, aviation included. Both nations recognized that technological leadership would define the future balance of power, and competition intensified in areas like aerospace, semiconductors, and artificial intelligence. The US responded by restricting China's access to advanced technology, tightening export controls on critical components and research. This move deepened the rift, fueling a sense of urgency in China to accelerate its own innovation and reduce dependence on American technology. In 2025, after more failed talks and mounting frustration, China struck back with a massive tariff on US passenger jets, sending a clear message that it was ready to defend its interests and retaliate against American pressure. This was a direct hit on Boeing, targeting its most valuable export and threatening thousands of American jobs. The company's future suddenly looked uncertain, as orders from one of its biggest markets dried up almost overnight. Meanwhile, China, now developing its own competitor, Comac, felt ready to challenge Boeing's dominance. Years of investment in domestic aviation were finally paying off, and China saw an opportunity to boost its own industry while weakening a key American rival. The tariff wasn't just economic, it was strategic, protecting China's rising industry and signaling a new era of self-reliance. Chinese leaders made it clear, they intended to become a global force in aviation, no longer content to play second fiddle. Years of simmering tension finally boiled over, with both sides digging in and the world's economic order shifting before our eyes. The diplomatic fallout was felt in boardrooms and government offices around the globe. Boeing found itself in the crosshairs of a global power struggle, caught between two superpowers whose rivalry now threatened its very survival. The company faced tough questions about its future and its place in a rapidly changing world. The era of easy cooperation was over, replaced by suspicion, competition, and a growing sense that the old rules no longer applied. The world's two largest economies were now locked in a battle for technological supremacy, with consequences that would ripple across industries, borders, and generations. For Boeing, the fallout was immediate and severe. Production lines slowed, workers faced layoffs, and the company's stock price tumbled as investors braced for a long and uncertain road ahead. The trade war had a new, very real casualty, one that symbolized the high cost of global rivalry and the end of an era in international business. China's 25% tariff on US passenger jets was a seismic shift. For a $100 million plane, that's an extra $25 million, enough to kill any deal. Chinese airlines, once Boeing's biggest buyers, suddenly looked elsewhere. Airbus and China's own Comac became the new go-to options. Boeing's leaders were stunned. Their largest export market had vanished overnight. Planes built for China now sat unsold, tying up billions in capital. The company had no choice but to suspend production of its most popular models. This wasn't just a business setback, it was a turning point. The tariff closed the door on decades of partnership. Boeing's factories went quiet, and the global aviation landscape changed forever. The first major casualty of the tariff war was clear American manufacturing. Halting production was Boeing's only option. Hundreds of Chinese orders vanished, leaving a gaping hole in the schedule. Unlike cars, jets are custom-built. Finding new buyers fast is impossible. Planes can't just sit in a warehouse. Each unsold jet is a financial anchor. The pain rippled outward. Thousands of suppliers, from engine makers to tech firms, lost their biggest customer. The pause wasn't just about Boeing, it threatened the entire American manufacturing chain. Stopping the lines was a desperate move to survive, not a strategy for growth. The company needed time to regroup and rethink its future. The cost, jobs, livelihoods, and America's industrial pride. Behind the headlines, real people paid the price. Layoffs swept through Boeing's workforce, skilled mechanics, engineers, and technicians suddenly out of work. Towns like Everett, Washington felt the shock. Restaurants emptied, small businesses struggled, families faced tough choices. The pain spread beyond Boeing. Suppliers across the country lost contracts, some forced to close. Generations of workers who built America's planes now faced uncertainty and loss. The ripple effect was enormous, touching nearly every state. For many, it wasn't just a job lost. It was a blow to identity and community pride. The emotional toll was as real as the financial one. The silence in the factories echoed in homes and neighborhoods. The trade war's victims weren't just numbers, they were families and futures. The cost of global conflict was suddenly, painfully personal. The American dream for many was put on hold. Boeing's crisis sent shockwaves worldwide. Airbus, its main rival, stood to gain as Chinese airlines shifted orders. The balance of power in aviation tilted, threatening competition and innovation. Airlines everywhere faced higher prices and longer waits for new planes. China's COMAC emerged as a new contender, accelerating the shift toward economic blocks. The world's supply chains, once seamless, now looked fragile. Other industries watched, realizing global business could be upended overnight. The Boeing story was a warning. Political tensions can disrupt even the strongest global ties. The future of international trade had never looked more uncertain. Experts like Dr. Evelyn Reed see China's move as strategic, not just punitive. By making Boeing planes too expensive, China protects its own COMAC and guarantees a homegrown market. It's classic protectionism, on a massive global scale. For the US, the blow is severe. Boeing is America's top exporter, and these are high-skilled jobs that are hard to replace. The real danger? Weakening Boeing could mean losing America's edge in aerospace. Dr. Reed says the only real solution is renewed negotiation and trust building, but with relations at a low, that's a tall order. Boeing must scramble to find new markets, but replacing China is nearly impossible. The crisis exposes how much global prosperity depends on political stability. When politics fail, economies suffer. The lesson: in a globalized world, no company or country is immune to political fallout. The stakes are high and the consequences are real. The world is watching and learning. Boeing's halted production is a crossroads for the world. The silence in its factories is a stark reminder of how fragile global connections are. The lesson: no country or company stands alone. America's strength relied on selling to the world, China's growth depended on buying. The crisis warns against putting all eggs in one basket. Diversify or risk disaster. The future could bring more conflict, higher prices, and fewer choices if the US and China keep drifting apart. Or, this could be a wake-up call, an opportunity to rebuild trust and cooperation. For everyday people, this story is about jobs, prices, and opportunity. Understanding these connections is the first step toward demanding a more stable, cooperative future. The world must choose: more conflict or a return to shared prosperity.